What's up, slaps? I wanted to talk to you about your slap RQs. Put that up, turn that off. Let's talk about FRQs real quick for a few minutes. So I saw your responses, I graded them, gave you a little bit of not very specific feedback, but I want to talk to you a little bit more with some detail about how to make them better. So I've got a couple of points, and I've also uploaded some sample responses that I wrote just to give you an idea of what a good one would look like that responds to that prompt that I gave you about whether or not interest groups hinder or promote democracy. So first of all, a couple of tips, like some areas of correction that a lot of people made mistakes with. The first thing is don't just not watch the videos. Like I sent out a video saying, hey, here are the steps to take, and here's the sort of format or the formula, and it was very clear that a lot of people didn't watch the video, or you did watch the video and didn't really follow the steps. So there's a specific formula of how you get all 7 points. This argument essay is a 7-point FRQ. And I've also uploaded, in addition to the sample responses, a rubric that will break down the exact formula of how to get each of the 7 points. All right? So watch the video, look at the sample responses, and look at the rubric. The next time you write a practice one and the day of the real exam, use the rubric. It will tell you how to get each point. So, so that's the first thing. Know the format, watch the video, know how to do it. The second thing, separate your sections of your FRQ. If you look at the rubric with this video, I'm going to pull it up on my computer so I can look at it with you. It says total points possible, 7. Here's the format of how to write it. Part 1, it's basically broken down into 3 parts. There's your claim, there's evidence number 1, and then there's evidence number 2. So 3 parts: claim, evidence 1, evidence 2. Each time you finish with a section, space. Leave a space so that the reader can find your answers. Most of you just put one big jumbled paragraph. You want to separate it so your reader can go, okay, the first point, the defensible claim with reasoning, is in the first section, and then space. Doesn't matter how long it is, 1 sentence, whatever, space. The next part is your first piece of evidence, all right, and your reasoning why that is relevant. However long that is, just put it in 1 section, and then space, and then your second piece of evidence and why that is relevant, however long that is, and then you're done. So you should have 3 what look like paragraphs, but it doesn't matter how many sentences they are. It can be 1 to 5 sentences. If you have more than 5 sentences per section, it's too long and your person's bored. So, and I also broke down the rubric, how many points each part is worth. The first part, the defensible claim with reasoning, it's the easiest point to get, but it's the most important point, because without that point, you cannot get any of the other points. All right? So, defensible claim with reasoning. Interest groups promote democracy because, all right? So that's your claim. Interest groups promote democracy. Restate the prompt there. But it must have reasoning. That means you must say something like because. Don't just say the thing and then try to explain it away in your following sentences. Put the why and the explanation in that first sentence. Interest groups promote or hinder democracy because whatever. And include that all in that first part. And then space down and try to explain with your evidence. All right, that's another reason why a lot of people miss points, because they didn't have their line of reasoning in their claim section. in the same sentence. All right, so watch the video, separate the parts, establish a line of reasoning in part one. All right, now going on to the evidence and why the evidence is relevant. A lot of people missed points because they did not know the documents, or they just included some type. I realize my forehead's been like cut off, whatever. I'm gonna back up. What was I saying? Oh, you don't know the documents. You're saying things like, oh, in the Constitution it says everyone, whatever. And I'm like, where is that in the Constitution? Cite something. Use the arguments in the documents. If specific to the U.S. Constitution, if you cite the Constitution as evidence, you have to talk about something in the Constitution. You can't just say, well, the Constitution said, and then some vague, something that doesn't even, it's not even in the Constitution. Like, for example, you have to say, Article 1 of the Constitution lists the powers of Congress. And one of those is the power to tax. And so you have to cite something specific in the Constitution. And I've got an example here of what that might look like. So if you're watching while you're looking at the documents I uploaded, look at my sample responses. All right. Option 1, I did one for and one against. So option 1, interest groups hinder democracy because they create an environment of corruption and allow small but powerful groups of people to dictate government policy. Boom, there's 1 point right there. Interest groups hinder democracy. That's my claim. My line of reasoning, because they create whatever, all right? And then I space so that my reader knows, all right, now I'm on to my evidence number 1. For evidence number 1, I've got Federalist 10, and I'm telling you what he's arguing and why his argument supports my claim. In Federalist 10, Madison argued that factions were a huge problem in society because they would overrule the will of minorities in the population. This is relevant because, so I'm trying to say, why does my evidence like tie into this? Why is it relevant to this specific prompt? This is relevant because interest groups are a modern example of the factions that Madison warned about. Things like big tobacco, social media. They have these lobbying wings that are in Washington trying to pursue their own agendas. Right? So how does that evidence support your claim? My claim is that interest groups hinder democracy. My supporting evidence, even Madison warns in the Federalist Papers that this was going to be a problem. So he's supporting what I'm saying, and it's relevant because of what I said. That's evidence 1. You'll get, basically, if you look at the rubric, 3 points for that middle paragraph. You get the 2 points for your evidence, and then the 1 point for why is it relevant. The why is it relevant is the hardest point to get, but it's important. And then my second piece of evidence would be the existence of the Federal Election Commission. The FEC also exists because people realize that money and interest groups can hinder democracy. That's evidence that what I'm saying is right. This is important to discuss, like here, because it is the FEC that creates rules and regulations that try to protect us from overpowering influence of interest groups. So I'm trying to give evidence and say why it's important or why it's relevant to this prompt and this claim that I've made. So in my opinion, I would give myself 7 out of 7 there. All right, now let's look at the other one. I'm going to scroll down. Option 2, interest groups promote democracy. There's my claim, because they exemplify free speech, civic participation, and representation of minority groups. So that's 1 point. And remember, you cannot get other points if you don't get that first point. It's the easiest point to get and the most important point to get. My evidence number 1, I've cited the Constitution, but I've actually cited the Constitution. I didn't just word vomit some nonsense and say U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects the right of the people to speak out on matters of public concern and petition their government. So that's why the U.S. Constitution supports my claim. This is my evidence that interest groups promote democracy, and I'm citing the U.S. Constitution, specifically the First Amendment, free speech, petition the government. Now, why is this relevant? This provision applies directly to interest groups because they are a perfect example of citizens actively participating in their government and exercising their constitutional rights by working with the government to address their concerns. Boom. That's 3 more points right there. I'm cooking. In Federalist number 10, so here's my other thing. James Madison warned against an overbearing majority. He said, all right, so again, I'm using Federalist 10 to support what I'm saying. Interest groups are good. James Madison doesn't want the oppression of minority rights. He said it was important that factions not control society. Here's my reason why it's relevant. Interest groups represent a way to protect against majority factions because these small groups of minority people can band together. Mothers against drunk driving, whatever. So anyways, hopefully that helps you a little bit. Use the rubric, use my examples, ask questions. We'll do another argument practice. I don't know if I'll do maybe I'll do another one this week, and then we'll do the concept application next week. So anyways, stay safe out there. The gym's opening back up Friday. Best news I've heard all ever. So see you next time. Holler at your boy.